which females were in the majority, was in the PhD honors level. But since then, they've taken over at the master's level. And then the way in which it's growing, I would imagine, if it's not already happened, very soon there'll be parity, or if not more females at the doctoral level than there are males. Okay. Next. I'm still going to go through, or we can pick it up in the discussion later on. Sheila, next, thanks. Okay, this is the slide that speaks to the issue raised by the minister regarding the skewed enrollments in favor of international students, particularly at the doctoral level. So the overall increase in postdoctoral in postgraduate enrollments, black and white for South Africa, in this period was 48%, and the major increase was at the doctoral level of 106%. But as you can see, international enrollments increased by double, close to double, by 92%. And particularly, there was a significant, substantive increase in postgraduate enrollments from the rest of Africa, and especially at the doctoral level, where it increased by 414%, which is substantive. As a result of that, although the proportion of South African students went down slightly across the different qualification levels, 88% to 85%, and international students increased similarly by 3% to 15%. The major, at the master's and PG honors level, South African proportion of totals remained fairly stable at 93% and 86%. And I think that's important. And we can pick it up later on, because it suggests that from a professional, from a career, and from a labor market point of view, honors, PGW honors and master's programs have greater value in the labor market than do doctoral programs. And it's something I think we should come back to later on. But as a result of that massive increase in students from the rest of Africa of 414%, the proportion of South African students enrolled in doctoral programs went down from 77% to 63%. But that in itself doesn't indicate that students are being discriminated against. So let me just step back. The reason for the very net increase from the rest of Africa and is that in 2005, the new funding formula came on stream, which gave a very high weighting for research masters and doctoral enrollments and graduates. And that was deliberately done because at the time, there was a turn that we were not producing enough graduates at the research masters and doctoral level, including in research outputs, which, as you know, in the case of research outputs, is now left as a result of a perverse incentive where institutions run after research outputs and forget about teaching quality of the outputs. But that's a separate matter. So in 2005, the incentive to institutions was to increase their doctoral enrollments from a subsidy point of view. There was a financial incentive. It's been argued that aside from the financial incentive, that there was also increased capacity, supervisory capacity to increase doctoral enrollments. I haven't seen any hard evidence to support that. There may or may not have been. In certain cases, I suspect now that people are being, that there are many more students than they can cope with in terms of supervision. South African students, so the increased enrollments that institutions required at the time was not being taken up by South African students, largely because of funding. And we'll come back to the funding issue. So the space that was created was taken up from the rest of Africa because South Africa was an attractive option. Attractive both in terms of costs, was cheaper to copy PhD or other doctoral study in South Africa than to do it in the UK, Europe, Australia. Secondly, South African institutions, particularly the research-intensive institutions, had a good and growing reputation in the rest of Africa. And in fact, the majority of the rest of Africa who came to do doctoral programs went to the 4 or 5 research-intensive institutions. So in a sense, the fact that the proportion of South African students has gone down is because there was no.
Hello, everyone.
No.
Is somebody perhaps here from the Center for Postgraduate Studies?
Sure, yes. Can you hear me?
Students from the rest.
Can you hear me, Anna? Hello? Hello, Anna? Anna, can you hear me? Wow.
That they had better foundational skills to pursue postgraduate study, pursue doctoral study. So there wasn't, it's not an issue.
Tipo, I'm struggling here.
Key point is that there's no evidence to suggest that the concerns raised by the committee regarding the enrollment schools, but they were being discriminated. There's no evidence to support them. It's also interesting, in the period from 2005 to 2015,
No, I can't hear you.
I don't.
Okay, or 21%. And for current year, when I look at the figures for 2020, 2022, it's only by about 5%. It seems to suggest that institutional capacity may be evidence in terms of supervised universities. My own view is that the increase of was largely by rather than capacity, but that's an issue for discussion and debate. Thanks. Next, Shiva. In relation to field of study, really, if I wanted, what I would like to highlight is that there's been a significant increase for the education in sound engineering, across the different curriculums, a small decrease in the humanities, fairly education, that because of the fact that the PT in education was there at some point. But the real concern is that.
Hi, everyone. Anyone watching the live stream on YouTube, if you wouldn't mind just holding on for a few minutes. Prof. Mutereko is just getting some assistance with a technical issue. Thank you.
Substantive decrease in the humanities, which I think is excluding education, which is a cause for concern, given the increasing important role that the humanities play in terms of addressing global grand challenges, and in terms of the need to address issues, social and cultural issues in relation to technology and so forth. And income, it's not easy. And there's a document about 81% of bursaries were allocated to SET.
Problem is they can't hear.
SET enrollments have increased in the proportions that they have. In the case of education, it's remained fairly stable. But I think we should just reduce and not have too many students doing PhDs in education. In 2020, there were 2,000 students enrolled in education for doctors. Large majority, 99% of them students, in my estimation, were enrolled. So teachers and so forth who enroll in education not because either they were interested in.
Not sure where it is. I think it's. There's a speaker. There is a way to test your microphone.
In some cases, because of individual interest. A large, but the kinds of topics that people study leave a lot to be desired. So to give you one example, and I'm harping on this topic of education. We recently, last year,
It is, okay.
yes,
I knew that on your.
Across the different qualification levels.
Hi, Anna, can you hear me now? Anna?
Yes, that's better.
Oh, great. Thanks so much.
After 6 years, it's increased from 50 to 66%. I think that raises concerns, at least in my mind, about the quality, issues of quality at Dr. I mean, a 22% increase in regulation time is a substantive increase. Unless there's evidence that it's because of interventions at the doctor in terms of supervisory support, mentoring, and so forth, it's hard to fathom how you could have such a big increase in this period. So I think that's something that the group EQPE may want to take up as part of a longer term project. In terms of doctoral graduates, there was a net increase under 200% in this period. So in 2020, the system graduated just over 3,500 doctoral students. It's got at an annual average of 8%. More recently, when I looked at the figures, it's gone down. But at the rate of 8%, so by 2030, one of the targets in the NDP that will be met, we will produce 5,000, but at least 5,000 graduates by 2030. Largely because of the increase, I think, of the enrollments.
Good afternoon, colleagues. Before I proceed, I want to know if you can hear me. Can you hear me? Am I coming through, Anna?
Yes,
Yes,
we can hear
yes.
you.
Oh, fantastic. Thanks so much, and sorry for the delays, and welcome to this workshop. I don't want to take much time, but I want to say that in partnership with Conversation, we have been able to assist many writers, students, scholars to publish their work, which has attracted international attention, which is a good opportunity for all scholars, emerging and established scholars. To help us today, we have Anna Wicks, who has been a journalist and a media activist since the early 90s. She has worked as a senior journalist in the Sowetan newspaper, New Frame as an editor at the Pacific Media Watch in New Zealand. Anna holds a master's in philosophy, journalism, and is currently doing her PhD at Rhodes University. She also lectured in journalism and media studies at the same university and runs a media training workshops for casual workers and community healthcare workers. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure and honor to have Anna Wicks to facilitate this workshop. Over to you, Anna. Anna? I think technology is letting us down. Am I coming through, colleagues?
Yes.
Yes.
It seems Anna is facing some challenges. There she is.
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Now we can hear you, Anna. Over to
Yes.
you.
If
We
you
have
can hear me,
introduced
can
many
you
friends
say something?
in your absence. I'm not sure whether you could hear me.
I can hear you, Anna.
Hello? Ingrid, I see you've unmuted. I can't hear you. I think I'm beginning to think the problem might be on my computer. Let me leave and come back in.
Sorry for that, colleagues. Anna, you are muted. Can you unmute yourself?
Hello, everybody. Can anybody hear me? Please, can you give an indication? Because it seems we have some.
Yes, we can hear you now. We can hear you. Can you hear us? Anna, we can hear you.
Hello, anyone?
Yes, we can hear you, Anna.
Yes, we can.
I'm sorry. I'm beginning to think the technical problem may have been on my side. Apologies for that. Prof, do you want to start?
I have already started. Perhaps in your absence, I've started, and I've just sent it over everything to you. You can proceed.
I'm so sorry. I couldn't hear anything on my side. Apologies for that, everyone. Okay, let me share the screen. Now, let me just get the... Oh, I'm so sorry. How do I share this? Okay. Okay, can everybody see the screen? It says the Conversation Africa.
Yes, we can.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, everybody, thanks so much, and sorry about the delay. I'm Anna Weeks. I'm the Environment and Energy and Climate Editor at the Conversation Africa. But even if your fields don't fall within that, you know, what I'm going to say to you is very generic about how we work generally. We have politics, we have arts, culture and society, business and economy, science and tech, education and health. So all of your fields will probably fall into one of those. What we do, for those of you who are not familiar, we're an independent, non-profit source of news, so a news website. We also run analysis stories, and all of the articles are written by academics. So there are no authors on our site who aren't academics. We don't have journalists at the site. We have editors, professional journalists who work as editors. So we don't go out and write stories ourselves. All the authors are academics. And all the articles are published under a Creative Commons license. We don't put them behind a paywall, so they get a global reach. And we're part of the global network of 10 sister sites: Australia, Canada, Indonesia, Brazil, USA, UK, New Zealand, and so on. So we've been around for 10 years. We have offices in Kenya, South Africa, Ghana, Senegal, and Nigeria. In the 10 years, we've published more than 12,000 articles from academics, and that's 7,762 academics in total. And I know this presentation was prepared last week, so we would have had even more academics, authors by now, because we're always getting new academics writing every week. We have 900 republishers. So the republishers are the news outlets all over the world, and a daily newsletter with links to the articles with 30,000 subscribers, and about 600,000 unique users monthly. So it is relatively big compared to many other news sites if you're looking for a bigger audience. So these are some of our republishers. So apart from news websites simply republishing the articles, you know, the SABC, ENCA, different radio stations will often phone the academics, of course, if you're willing, and do interviews on your articles. So the republishers follow standardized guidelines of just crediting you. They won't change anything at all in your articles. And we have a special audience development team that checks on all the websites to make sure that there's no article going out in your name that, you know, a news website may have changed. All of our articles are pitched at people who don't have university degrees, so they're written in an everyday language. It doesn't mean that you need to write them in an everyday language. We work with you as editors to do that. There are benefits for you of publishing with The Conversation. So we'll translate the research so that it engages with the general audience. And we find a lot of policymakers, key decision makers, and practitioners, fellow practitioners that you may not know yet, actually pick up the research. And then what our academic authors tell us is that when people read their articles, they also click on the link to the academic research. So we can actually include links to many of your published works in peer-reviewed journals. So normally our articles are based around one of your latest pieces of research, but if you've written other pieces of research on the topic, then we could link to them throughout the article. So it helps drive more traffic to your research as well. We worked on an online editing platform that the editors and the academics both work on together, and the academic has final control over everything that goes out in the article. So we can't publish it unless you click on a link to approve. Now, can you write for The Conversation? This is a question we always get asked. So to write for The Conversation, you have to be a researcher or an academic working at one of our accredited universities. So we basically have thousands of accredited universities. Those are universities that run, you know, the full scale of PhD programs. So not some of the private universities in this country that don't have postgrad or PhD programs. You have to really publish an article on your own original work. So mainly when you've published a journal article, then the academic will get in touch with us to talk about translating that into a more popular article. PhD candidates can also write, and they don't need to write with their supervisors, but they can only write on the topic of their PhD and only after they've finished data collection. We can't publish articles from master's students or undergrads. And so we're a nonprofit, we don't pay academics, and academics don't have to pay us. It's all done in a nonprofit way. So these are just some of our stats of what happens when you share your research. So we have a kind of a feedback form, and we track as well. So we find, 13% of authors are contacted by government or policymakers, 7% by business or industry. 27% of our authors have actually used our metrics for funding or grant application, because you will get access to a dashboard which will show you exactly how many people are reading your article, where it's being republished, and which countries your readers are based in. So 26% of our authors have said it's given them opportunities to collaborate with other academics, and 7% are invited to contribute to briefing papers or submissions to Parliament. Another 17% of authors are invited to speak at conferences, and this is what I was mentioning earlier. 19% have seen increased citations for their scholarly work, and we have quite a lot of authors. 57% are contacted by the media for interviews. This is the metrics from Rhodes, just for the last, say, 18 months. So not for the whole 10 years. So we've had 25 academics from Rhodes working on 24 articles, because you can co-author an article. You can have as many co-authors as you like, as long as they meet the criteria of having a PhD and being based in a university. So we don't take articles from authors who have a PhD but they've gone to work in the private sector or in the nonprofit sector, unless they still retain, say, a research associateship with a university. So just the Rhodes University articles in the last 18 months have had nearly 526,000 reads. There's 7 on energy and environment, and you can see on the side we've got education, we've got some on arts, culture and society, and so on. And we have a French edition too, TC Afrique. So they choose to publish translate articles and publish them in French. You can see some of the articles along the side that have done really well. And we had an author from Rhodes who wrote about a rare megamouth shark found in East Africa for the first time, and that got 107,000 reads. So this is what your dashboard will look like. I'll just leave. This is the author Rhett. So he actually works for the Wildlife Conservation Society, but he's a research associate at Rhodes. So we have a lot of authors like that who are research associates, and then they do other work elsewhere. For example, SANBI. And SANBI is itself an accredited institution. So this is what, say you were Rhett and you wanted to see how your article was doing, you'd just click on your dashboard. You'd see the number of reads and when the readers started to, increase, and you would see which countries they came from. So quite interesting. Most of his readers came from the US. And then where you see a section in blue of the pie chart that says other, that's usually a number of different countries that have, small bits of readership each. And then you can see that this author, Rhett, got a lot of reads from his article being picked up by Live Science and Newsbreak. And And when that happens, the reads go up quite a bit. So we found that lately News 24's health and wellness section is picking up the health articles, and then they get, you know, an extra 10 or 20,000 views. So it's quite good for the author. Okay, we often get asked what type of stories we publish. So it's mainly new research, also news analysis and explainers. You know, things that are in the current affairs. Say, I think this one on the elections, how the elections body has done a good job for the past 30 years, that would have come out in 2024. So that's just an explainer. And sometimes more general articles, say this one about sugar. We'll ask for an academic, a scientist, to explain. You don't have to write the whole article yourself, especially if you're very short of time. We can do a Q&A with you where we email you 4 questions and you email back the responses. It's the same editing process. You have control over it, and you have to sign off on it. But we find the Q&As are really quite popular. And so I don't know if you can see at the bottom, there's a story about how venomous snakes could start migrating in large numbers, moving to different countries if the world heats up by 5 degrees more than it was in pre-industrial times. So that was some brand new climate research. So those are the kind of stories we cover. There's a nice one about how a rural school is really doing well. Its students are producing very good exam results, and then the academic who's done research there would unpack that. So good news stories too. I'll go through this briefly. Does anyone want to ask a question before I start on this section? Let's see. Shall I carry on, and then we could have some questions, and I'll monitor the chat. So I'll go back.
Let's carry on.
Okay, thanks, Prof. How do you turn your research into an article? We don't want you to think it's you've done all this work putting your journal article together. It's taken months and months, and now you have to repeat the process for the conversation. So it's not like that. We have a science communication structure, and it's the same with the conversation sites all over the world. So we try to streamline everything and also make it easier for the academics. So the first thing you will do is to go to our website and pitch us a story idea. So a pitch is basically a very short explanation saying what story you want to work on. So you will fill in, say, 2 lines in that bar that says significance. And the significance is where you contemplate how you're reaching out to an ordinary audience of non-academics and what is the importance of your topic to them. So just in very accessible language, just write 1 or 2 sentences there. And relevance, I mean, that is something that academics already do, explain how their research is relevant. And then timeliness, why are you writing about this issue now? So some articles are timeless, explainer articles on topics, and some might be very relevant to something that's in the news. These are our top pitching tips for you. So what we really want to know from you is what is your story? So in a nutshell, what are the conclusions or findings from your research? What do you want the readers to take away from your research? So they're not going to read the whole journal article. So your journal article has to present your findings in a kind of a snapshot form. So you just be very concise and clear. Then we always ask, why should the reader care? You know, if you imagine a reader who's never heard of your topic and who's not in your field, why would they find it interesting? A non-specialist reader. So that's where you explain that part of it in 1 or 2 sentences. And again, you can explain if it's a current issue. It doesn't have to be a current issue. I mean, we know that your journal research takes a long time to get published. So that's fine. And then the last point, why are you the person to write this? Because all of our articles are very transparent, we include a sentence in the introductory section where you outline your expertise. So you might say, you know, I'm a climate scientist, or I've been involved in curriculum development research in secondary education for 30 years. So that's all that means. You just state your expertise so that people know a bit about the person who's writing the article. So things that you would focus on: your research, what is the angle, what's new, what's the hook for the reader, something very interesting that the reader would find very, very fascinating about your article. So with journal articles, I mean, we all know there's a kind of a long literature review section. So that's what we would kind of do much less of in the Conversation Africa articles. It's more about your findings, and you would give just enough background and context for a non-specialist reader to understand the context. And then we always talk about a golden thread. That's just the thread, you know, running through the article that keeps the reader focused on the point that you're trying to communicate. So things to avoid, and this is what we also assist writers with as editors. We don't use any acronyms. So we write out everything in full, and that's because our research has shown that once we start putting 3 or 4 acronyms in, even if you write the word in full in the first mention, readers kind of switch off because they're just not familiar with them. It's definitely very different to writing an academic essay. It's a popular piece of writing, and our articles are also only 800 words, so they're much shorter. We avoid jargon, which includes technical terms, specialist terms, and so on. And we have actually an AI tool that specializes in assessing whether the article is readable. So that you will see when you start editing on the online collaborative platform. It will prompt you to say, you know, your sentences are 26 words long and there should be no more than 17. And we avoid rhetorical questions. We keep everything very fact-based. So every statement of fact in the article, we link it to your research or other people's research that you may have used in your own journal article. So we won't do that for now. We'll go, that's for a longer workshop. I'll just tell you a bit about how long the stories take and what kind of phases they go through. So you would submit your pitch online. There's a pitch committee who meets twice a week. As soon as they accept it, the editor in charge of your section, you know, whether it's the health editor, education editor, business editor, will email you, and we'll have a bit of an email with you and agree on a brief. So that's the main point of the article and why it matters. And then you write up your article, email it through to us. And then we have 2 different editors who will look at it and make editing suggestions. And at that point, you'll get it back and you'll see your article as you submitted it, but with a whole bunch of suggestions on. And lots of the time, we just move text around as well. And we might ask you additional questions. And then you would type in all of that on the article itself. And then the article goes back to your editor for polishing. So this is where the editors normally do a kind of a big edit and take out all the technical terms and change everything into everyday language. And by this time, often the articles are about 1,200 words. So then we cut them back down. But then it goes back to you again. So you can always input. You can say to us, no, you've taken out something that's really important, or I'd want to add this in here, or there's something new that's happened that I want to add in. And then it goes to a review editor after that. That's when it's really almost ready to publish. Then we have a headline team who writes a really great headline. So we don't use any academic headlines or technical words that aren't in everyday use in the headline either. And finally, you get the article to approve. And once you've approved it, the articles are published within about 2 weeks. So yeah, that's about it. I've sent the slideshow to Esetu, and let me just go out of this, and she will distribute it to all of you who are here. Should we have some questions now? That would be great. I can't see any questions in the chat, but you can just unmute yourself and ask whatever you would want to.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, good afternoon. Thank you so much, The Conversation Africa. My name is Joy Joseph. I was wondering, you said your publications are only for people, researchers who are based in universities. Am I right?
Yeah, yes, we do have a few accredited institutions that aren't universities, such as SANBI, and I know the Geneva Botanical Gardens. There's a research group called CGIR, and their academics are also accredited. So if you're not in a university, you can just reach out to us and ask us if your institution is accredited, and we'll let you know straight away.
I just want to find out if you are an independent researcher. Does it mean you don't have a space with the conversation? Of course, I just finished my postdoc now. I'm still searching for another opportunity. So that means I can't publish with you. Or I have to say, put the affiliated university. I'm not sure. Please, I want it very clear.
Yes, unfortunately, you're
Okay.
right. You have to have some affiliation with a university or one of the accredited institutions. So
Okay.
we do have independent researchers, but they've arranged a research affiliate or a research associate post with one of the universities. Then they can publish.
Okay. Another question. I didn't get that part clearly. Did you say you publish 800 words? I didn't hear that. Did you say 800? I didn't hear.
Yes, sorry. The articles should be 800 words. They can go up to 1,000 words, but no longer than that. And we find people don't read. The shorter, the better. If they're 800 words, they get more reads.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I should also have said, it wasn't on the presentation. Academics have to publish on topics that are in your own fields. So if your field is, say, computer science, and you just feel like writing a kind of an article about medicine or health, we wouldn't publish that kind of an article because that's not your field, and you probably don't have academic research to back it up. And people often send us blogs and opinion pieces because, as you know, you may often, academics often write opinion pieces for, news websites, Daily Maverick, News 24, Mail and Guardian. So our style is a bit different. We can work with you to tweak those, but everything in an article in the conversation has to be fact-based. So it has to be backed up by research. Yeah.
Okay, I have another question. Sorry,
Yes.
I'm just taking the lead. I'm sorry, everybody. I just don't want to make a mistake. I like this that you have just raised, that you have to publish in your field, right?
Yes.
Now, if you have to, there's a professor of biotechnology, and I do interdisciplinary research in the humanities. He looks at, I'm looking at food security and genome editing. And I'm taking it from the women's side, how women have shortage of food. But I need this biotechnology professor. It's a combined interdisciplinary research. How does food security, the genome editing, process facilitate food security for women in the rural area? I'm in humanities. Now, you just told me now that you have to publish in your field. This is humanities and is it pure sciences or natural sciences? So that means we don't have a space with you. Yeah, because you just said you need to publish in your field. I'm not quite sure. I just like clarification. Thank you, dear.
Thanks. No, we do love interdisciplinary articles. So you can, if you're co-authoring some interdisciplinary research with colleagues from other departments, then you would co-author the article and the conversation with them as well. And if you yourself, I mean, we have quite a few authors who, I'm thinking of an example, agricultural scientists who are looking at the food, water, energy nexus. And they've done a lot of published research on that, even though they're not maybe water scientists or hydro scientists. So, but that's fine because that's their ongoing research work and they've been interdisciplinary for a long time. But what we have to avoid is the rare occurrence where somebody has really one strong field and then they just decide that they would like to comment on something in society that's in another field completely that they've never done any research work on, and then it's more like a blog or an opinion piece. That's just a different type of article that we don't publish. All our articles are fact and research based because we put links in throughout the articles. You'll see in every article there might be 10 or 15 links. And that's, for credibility as well. So that the readers can see that the topic has been broadly researched and everything in the topic is accurate. I hope that answers.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Who else would like to ask any kind of question at all? Prof. Mutireko, would you like to come in?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, fantastic. Thanks so much. I think you have explained everything. You have also pointed out that you could have a more expanded workshop.
Yes.
Can you explain that and what will be the focus and when can we arrange that if you're available so that people can actually learn how to do everything you're talking about practically?
Yes, great, Prof. So we do have an expanded workshop, but some of our more senior editors normally facilitate that. So we could, I know you're in contact with our partnerships manager. We could chat after the meeting. So yes, in that workshop, we will sit together physically, in a workshop space and work on pitches together and go through, journal articles and see what you would put into your article, what you wouldn't put in, and so on. But having said that, you shouldn't wait for the workshop to begin pitching. Just begin pitching now because we don't, we know it can be kind of tricky if you've spent, your last few years or maybe even your last 10 or 20 years writing, your master's thesis, your PhD thesis, and numerous research outputs, supervising PhD students, and then you have to just quickly switch to the popular format. So that is why all of us editors are there. So we can really support you and help you translate all your academic research to popular writing. You don't have to feel that you have to approach us with a finished article ready to publish. The whole process takes about only 3 days, not 3 full days, but once you submit an article, we can say to you, how about you take this out? How about you add a bit more of this in? How about you explain this concept? And then we can move through it in about 3 days. I'll just go to the chat. There's a message from Ingrid. A writing workshop would be of great value, particularly with regards to the pitch. Okay, that's good. I think what I'll do is I'll ask our partnerships manager to get in touch with Prof and see when they can arrange that, because that would be really nice. But even the pitch, don't worry too much that you might not be able to write the perfect pitch. As long as you as long as you can explain, which you already do that in your abstract, as long as you can explain the uniqueness and the importance of your own research, that's great for the pitch. Even with the pitch, the editor that you pitch to, so when you pitch, it goes automatically to the editor of the area. So if you're pitching in politics, it will go to the politics editor. That editor will engage with you as well. They might drop you an email to say, you know, can you explain a little bit more about this? So so don't worry too much about writing a perfect pitch. Okay, I have a message in the chat from Puleng. The research, you said the research must be current. How current is current? I completed my PhD in 2022, and I want to know if that is too old. Yeah, so it's not that it's too old, but with PhDs, we do publish articles on PhD, but we prefer the author to focus on because a PhD is such a broad and vast piece of work, a certain concept in the PhD. So you may have done a PhD in on something that's now very current. I mean, for example, we've had people who've done PhDs on aspects of artisanal mining, and then when artisanal mining comes into the news, they say, oh, but this is exactly what was in 2 chapters of my PhD, and then they write on that. Yeah, so Puleng, you say you want to write on a section. That's great. Yeah, I would encourage you just to pitch it. And then we'll chat about, you and the editor will chat about what to write on. We have a lot of people who do PhDs and then they publish from their PhD and then they pitch to us based on that. But you can definitely pitch based on a chapter or a section of your PhD, definitely. Another thing I should mention, there are a lot of academics who are doing, you say, fantastic ongoing research work, say on water quality, say that, they're building some kind of new nanotechnology that cleans water for a relatively inexpensive investment. But what we do say is you can't really write on research that you're currently busy with, that you haven't published anything on yet, because we do have to link in the article to published research that the readers can then click on. So it's the main articles we published are based on peer-reviewed public research. Lindisa Funane agrees about the writing workshops. Completed my master's cum laude, but I'm struggling to write an article. I really need help. So again, another thing I can mention on this point, reach out to us, because we have once we've agreed with you on the 2 most important, a 2-sentence kind of nugget on the importance of your research, why it would matter to the public, then we can give you our regular science communication structure, which tells you how to structure your article, and then you can have a go at doing that, and then we can work together on the edit. So yeah, until we get the workshop organized, hopefully we could do it quite soon, but definitely do reach out to us with pictures. And if you go onto our, let me see if I can call this up on the screen for you to show you where the pitching section is. I'll just scroll down to it, and then I'll come back to this and share the screen. Share. Okay, so can you see on the conversation on the page that says contact us? You would scroll down to where it says pitch an article and click on that. This just is showing that you are working in a university. And then here's the form. So it does give you some guidelines. So in 1 sentence, what is your story about? And then you'd go down to the next part, which is, as I said just now, why would a non-academic reader who doesn't know about your field find it interesting? And then you can add in, 150 words over here of key points from your research. Multimedia, so if you've been doing especially research in the field, we like having pictures of you and your participants as well. You can, but it's not vital. I mean, we know many researchers don't take multimedia. And then the rest, you just click on these areas. And then you put in your contact phone number, your expertise. This is where you talk about what the article is based on. And you put in a link to your PhD or your journal article. Or if you've been researching the same field for, a very long time, you would write about that there. So don't feel like you must do a workshop before you send in a pitch, because as soon as you send in this pitch, then we will work closely with you on fine tuning what you want to write about. Yeah, we have I should say we have hundreds of new authors every year who haven't written any popular articles before, and they all cope fine. They all come up with great stuff. Oh, here's a comment in the chat from Elisa. With regards to background and literature during article writing, how stringent is the referencing? Great question. So we don't use any in-text citations or reference lists at the end of the article. All of the referencing is done by hyperlink. So let me share the screen again quickly, because we still have a few minutes. And I'll go on to one of our stories and I'll just show you. Okay, I'll just find, the first story on our homepage, and I'll show you. So you can see here, can you see the second paragraph? There are hyperlinks to many things. So, they're talking about a person, so they put a hyperlink to her. They're talking about the fact that urbanization in the coming decade will take place in cities, so they'll put a link to research for that. They've said that in Sao Paulo there are 22 million people. In Joburg there are 6 million people. So all of your in-text citations that you would normally do in a journal article, we do them through links. And that's also to assist the ordinary non-academic readers, so that they can actually just click on these links. So you see, you can put in links to almost everything, or you can just put in links to your key statements of facts, and where you're mentioning, say, a law or anything like that, you'd put in a link. I'll stop the share. So what do you...
Yeah, another question.
Yes.
Sorry, please. I just wanted to get this clarification. Do you only publish original articles or articles that have been published before? I didn't get that part. You must have published it before and then you bring it to the conversation, or it's a fresh article? I'm not sure.
Yes. Okay, great. Thank you so much. That's such an important question. So, yes. So you would do a peer-reviewed research article, and then as soon as it's published, or once it's been peer-reviewed and you have a rough idea of when it's going to be published, then you would approach us to say you want to write a popular article in everyday language based on that research. And then it would be an original article, because you wouldn't just be copying and pasting text from your academic research article over, because we're not an academic publisher. We would convert all that into everyday language. And so if you do a piece of research and it's peer-reviewed and published, and then you write up a popular article and you give it to us, and then you give it to the Daily Maverick and then News 24 at the same time, then we wouldn't publish it, because then we only want articles that haven't been published elsewhere. Is that okay?
Yes. I I like this idea of everyday language when you know where your article is going to. So I've gotten it clear. Another thing is, what if it's a book chapter, a published book chapter, but you want to put it in the everyday language, like you just said?
Yeah.
Is that acceptable?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, certain conference presentations as well, if there's an element of peer review in them, that's also fine. And that's what you would put into the pitch form, you know, where the material comes from that you're going to write about. It's your own published journal research, it's your own PhD thesis, and then we can have an engagement with you on that as soon as you pitch it. There's a question from Penny. As a social scientist and one concerned with ideological slants, may I ask if you have a particular preference for your articles? Yeah, no ideological preference. Obviously, you know, no right-wing stuff or hate speech, probably. But I mean, we publish from academics across the political spectrum and across the ideological spectrum. So, you know, nobody will say if you're a political scientist that, you know, we're not going to publish you because you're taking a certain, you know, political position. As long as the research is solid, which it's usually is if it's gone through the peer-reviewed process and been published in a journal. Yeah, there's definitely no ideological slant. Although people often say we're very middle of the road, but it's because we're aiming to accommodate all academic research on all the different topics out there. Prof, we've reached the end of our time, but if there's any more questions, it's fine. Do you want to come in here, Prof Mutireko?
Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to learn from you. I was impressed by Kelly. You know, you worked with Kelly last week. She published an article with Conversation that attracted a wider readership, and she was so impressed. Many people were able to pick it. In fact, that article was also picked by other newspapers.
Yeah.
So I would like to encourage colleagues to take this opportunity to expand the reach of their work. Thank you so much, and thanks so much, colleagues. If there are no questions, I think what is left for me is just to thank Anna Wicks, and we shall talk, you and I, we shall talk to organize the next workshop. Thank you so much, colleagues.
Thank you, everyone, and sorry about
just to say,
tech problems. Sorry.
Esetu is going to share some of the slides that Anna presented. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a nice day.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you, colleagues. Bye. Have a good day. Thank you so much.
Thank you, bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.
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 Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.